showcased some of the best of what is present in our community. And I thought it was especially relevant as we're processing, all of us in our own ways, what life is and what our priorities are during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I found Peggy's message important as I continue to think about myself and what my priorities are right now in light of this global experience. So that was just what I wanted to share at the beginning about how I found Peggy's book and part of some of the parts that I thought were so wonderful about the project. So I thought maybe, Peggy, we could start with just that first question. We talked about the challenge of stopping dancing. So of course the book is Enough As You Are, and so it's a special work about self-acceptance and coming to know oneself in a very particular and directed and confident way. So in the first chapter, Peggy describes how oftentimes people realize in life that there's a time where we lose our own confidence because we start caring what others think, and we begin to prioritize views that are not our own and allow those views to be directive and definitive, as we pursue the horizon of our own life. And so Peggy calls this stopping dancing, and has a few very beautiful memories about that. So maybe, Peggy, we can just kind of open up with this first point.
Well, I think something triggers you. Like, I don't know if you've been looking at like old photographs while you're home alone in the pandemic, at times. And I came across a photo of my youngest, Elizabeth, right there with waving, and she was dancing in her bathing suit at a company picnic with my husband. This was after a really long day, and they had a raffle and you had to stay to win, so we all hung in there, and her hair's askew and she's got chocolate on her face, and she's, she just looks like a tired little, not even quite 2-year-old girl, like dancing around. But the photographer captured it, and this was before digital, and she just looks so happy, and her little tummy sticking out and her little thighs, she's just got little chubby thighs. But no one looked at that picture and said, oh, she would be so cute if she just brushed her hair, if you wiped the chocolate off, or if she lost a little weight. No one says that, and she doesn't feel it. She's out there in her bathing suit dancing around. And I thought, when do we start listening to other voices that we're not able to jump up and dance in our bathing suit? And I clearly, I don't believe in my book enough to come here in a bathing suit and start dancing. But I realized that it gets earlier and earlier. And this same little girl who danced in her bathing suit came home in first grade with her Barney lunchbox and said, I think I'd like to take a paper bag to school for my lunch. And I was like, what happened to Barney? And she said, this girl across from her at the lunch table said, you still like Barney? And you know that tone. And so it was like, yeah, maybe. Don't say anything. Just come home and put Barney on the shelf. And then do you pick out, I don't know who else was there, Powerpuff? Do you upgrade it to Barbie? And she's like, no, just give me a brown bag. I'm just going to be safe. Now, happily, by the time she went to high school, she brought a Superman lunchbox to school and didn't care. But there's that time period where you start hearing, I'm sure there are kids that hear like, oh, where'd you get that outfit? Or do you wear those jeans? Or what's going on? And so that's why in the first chapter, I encourage us to just try and feel like we can just get up and dance in our bathing suits and see what voices do I listen to. And, I'd like to hear from you guys and what you say.
I got nervous. I didn't know that you had planned to come home.
Hi, Chick. So I encourage you, anyone want to talk about some voice that, they've been hearing in the pandemic, what, you're not making homemade bread and cleaning out your closet. You're just sitting there in the same clothes you've worn 3 days in a row and just eating potato chips. That's me.
Currently unmuted.
No, I've been reading downloaded books from the Library of Congress, and I haven't been doing that. I've been trying to, I get dressed as if I was going to go out, even if I don't, just so that I can at least act sort of normal. But I've been listening to, but as a kid, you occasionally get, oh, why are you wearing this? I said, because I happen to like it. Although I can always tell you, I usually get mix and match on any clothing, because I'll just make sure that I always make sure I look good. I always have. So I don't leave myself open for anybody to say anything.
So, does anyone else want to chime in? Like, even now being a younger student, your daughter at PC having the right phone, or I don't know. I don't know what's cooler. I've never known what's cooler. But Father, do you see that in kids today?
Well, that was a huge part of what why I thought the book was interesting, because I don't think there's like a definitive moment in an exhaustive way. I love Elizabeth's childhood example, because I think it's kind of embarrassing about Elizabeth, and I like that part of it, whom I know a little bit. So, like thinking of her in the bathing suit and the Barney lunchbox, I think that's charming. But part of it is because I can see in my own life a couple times, like I've seen this happen to me in multiple times, and so like the childhood moments are very felt, certainly adolescence, which is just horrific. And part of what's so beautiful about Providence College is that we provide this opportunity for people, in special ways, undergraduates, as they're pursuing their own identity. So it certainly happens there again. But I think any time where you embark on a new venture, anytime there's a possibility for self-recreation, like the moment where you take a new job, or like for me when I joined the order, it's like, okay, well, who am I going to be now? I think that those moments are always invitations to kind of check that point, and moments where we can encounter that voice of discouragement, and moments where we I would encourage us to shoo them off, and to help other people shoo them off in the name of authenticity.
I would think too, it's harder nowadays to shut down voices because of social media. That if your post doesn't get likes, or you don't get comments like "nice new photo," I don't even have the lingo right.
That's a huge concern I have as a chaplain. Huge.
And
the levels of self-comparison are totally new. But I'm sorry, I'm talking over somebody. Excuse me. Was that Mary? Were you going to chime in there?
Yeah, no, Peg and Father. I love the story about Beth in her bathing suit. She didn't care that she had a big belly and she was in a bathing suit. I think as we get older, the word that's resonating with me is courage. Do you have the courage, like you said, Peg, to be different, do whatever you want to do? Like, now I'm a 50-year-old woman. I'm not going to go dancing in the street in my bathing suit, but young kids, they have courage. They don't know enough, right? So they just do. But as we get older, we lose courage because we're worried about what others are going to think, or what others are going to say or do. So the word courage was just coming to me. I've yet to read your book, and I certainly will, but I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, if that's a word that resonates with us. So
I'm happy to chime in. Does anyone else want to say something first? Because God, I can talk. Stop laughing, chick. Anyway, I think that courage is just an essential part of feeling good enough about yourself. It's just like, you have to be brave and almost heroic and just say, I'm going to do it. But what feeds that courage? What makes you charge into just deciding who you are without, being thoughtless? And I think part of it comes from being affirmed by people who have just loved you honestly the way you are, and haven't made a big fuss about you. I tell the kids, I used to come down all dressed up for something, and my father would be reading the paper, and I say, how do I look, Dad? Oh, very nice. And he didn't care, but that was good. He didn't care. I mean, like in the sense, like, he loved me as I was, and I never left that house not feeling supported and loved. And I think that's what fires the courage. I don't know, but maybe you can elaborate more on what you mean.
No, yes. I mean, thankfully I grew up in a family that, yeah, that they accept me and love me for who I am and what I am. But I think as we get to be adults, voices do get in our heads, right? Your friends, your neighbors, social media, what you're doing with your children. Oh gosh, so it could get really blurred. And those voices can really take a toll on you. So.
Connected to this kind of courage, Peggy, one of the stories that you told me as we were talking about the book was that powerful first night out when you were a freshman at Providence College. Do you mind telling that story? Because I think that one of the keys here is friendship, and that it's aloneness and isolation. Like, that's what makes us wear down on these things. But friendship and community are part of the answers, just like courage is, Mary.
Right.
Do you mind telling that story, Peggy?
Not at all. And I'll preface it with saying that friendship had always been a little nebulous or fearful for me, because I had a best friend through grammar school. And then, like, right when we got to 7th grade, I got dropped like a hot potato. I wasn't cool enough. And then when I finally found my way through high school, I made some really nice friends, and I'm still friendly with some of them today. But you always had that sort of like in the back of your head, like about friendship. And then I show up at PC, and I knew no one. There were 5 boys and myself going to PC. And I was put in a dorm room with Mary Ellen Martins, God rest her soul, and Annette Markarian. We filled out this big profile, like what your likes are and dislikes, and then our names are MAR, MAR, and MAR. So they clearly did a top-notch job in res life, putting the 3 of us together. It's like, okay, they'll look good. They all go together alphabetically. So we show up.
It's very scientific, Peggy.
Yes. And so then Mary Ellen went to St. Mary's in New Haven, and she came with several other girls. There were 3 others, I think. And so one of them was Beth Johnson, who, you can see Elizabeth Johnson's name down there. And so they said, you can hang out with us. And they were nice. So we had dinner, hung out. And then our first Saturday night, we came we had orientation. We went to the Rathskeller. Now I don't even know if it used to be like a soft lounge, and then it used to be another lounge. It's not where McPhail's is. It was in the corner. Drinking age was 18, if you remember, Heidi. We could go in there, and we were so excited. Oh my gosh. We had IDs, no problem. We all march in, hand our IDs. Some big burly senior man's there, like, okay, laughing at us. And we march in, and we're walking in, and then he says, and you're all 18, right? And I have many good and bad qualities. And I don't know if this is a good one or a bad one, but I can't lie. I just can't. I have no poker face. And so I went, no, but I'll be 18 in October, and I'm just going to get a soda. So the guy says, hit the road. He doesn't want to lose his job. I don't know, for whatever reason. So I say to the girls, see you later. Thinking, there I go. I'm going back to my big night, my first big night in college, and I'm going to sit in my dorm room and cry. And these magnificent, wonderful girls all turn around and leave with me. And they're like, we'll find something else to do. I know, Beth. And anyways, see, my kids calling it, and they stayed with me, and I don't even know what we did. We sort of wandered the campus. We didn't know where to go, and we didn't know where we were. And then maybe we ended up going back to a room and talking. I have no idea. I can't remember what we did that night, but I can remember not being left out and having somebody be so kind and embrace me. And from that day, I was just like, these people at PC are nice. And I felt at home.
Well, and might I add, that same friend of my mother's, when I attended Providence College, took me out to Italian restaurants at least once a month, because she lived in Cranston. Whenever I was homesick, it always felt nice to know that my mom's best friend was there for me.
That's beautiful.
So I think there's a fear of being, fear of missing out now? But I think there's a fear of being left out and just sort of feeling alone. And I think that the one, I felt at Providence, sure, there's like kids that think they're cooler, maybe, but I think there was always just a general tone at the school that was like, you're just going to accept everybody. You know, you're not going to be mean. Like, you may not want to be friends with this person, or you may not want to hang out with that person, but there's a, you know, they talk about like a sort of a corporate message that comes out. Well, I think the message, and I've seen it with my own children, is still, there's a place for everyone here, and that you're welcome. And I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know why you decided to get on the algorithms that decided roommates, because basically student life when you were there was Father Heath and the Colonel and a deck of index cards, but you didn't have the army of people you've got now. But a couple of things. One, you're talking about a timeless problem. I mean, I can remember being a freshman in high school, and there was always someone that just ended up at the bottom of the pile. And that was, I think that's, social media makes it a different way of getting there. And I think certainly there's more bullying, but that problem has always been with us. And it tends not to go away as you age, because you evolve through different sets of people and different frames of reference and different professional needs. And then finally you land at a point where you don't much care anymore because you're retired and you're not looking for another job and you're not networking with anybody, which is where I am. I mean, I don't, it's, my life is not going to be a heck of a lot different if someone doesn't like the Facebook posts of my dogs. But I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I think we just have different mechanisms to enable it.
Yeah.
True, but if you weren't invited to a party in 7th grade, you didn't know it maybe, or you might have heard rumors, but you didn't have to go on Facebook and look at 10 photos of all these kids, like, shooting, confetti in the air or something. I'm exaggerating, but, nobody shoots confetti. I don't know what a 7th grader does at a party, but, I think that if you pay attention to that, if you're not on Facebook, then you don't have to listen to it. But if you're not on Facebook, kids will probably say, "You're not on Facebook," or they probably aren't on Facebook in 7th grade. They're on some other platform. But
well, kids don't think it's cool to be on the same thing that their grandparents are on. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, they're on something. I don't know. So, but I think that I think it's still hard, and it still does come down to what voice do you listen to, and how welcoming are you as a person. And I don't even know if those girls made a conscious effort. They just were raised in a way where you don't ditch a friend. No man left behind. And I just think that when you surround yourself with supportive and good people, or you become that same person that looks around and says, "I'm not leaving that person sitting alone." I mean, obviously everyone's alone now, but I mean, in the real world, if you go into a meeting or a parish dinner or a social club or onto a soccer field, always approach somebody who seems to be alone. Now, maybe they want to be alone, and then you'll find out quickly. But if not, make them feel welcome. Like, just embrace them, because ultimately, amid all this, am I good enough? Or some people are saying, are they good enough? And if we buy into that God loves us, if we really buy into that, then we're all good enough by our mere creation and baptism. So.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, the friars have been praying every morning and every evening for an end to the pandemic. And one of the things that's very charming about it is that there's not a prescribed prayer. So every friar presents this intention sort of from his own heart. And so it's in the chapel there in the priory, and it's the last intention to be named before the Our Father. And yesterday I had one of those, I've just had enough of the pandemic, I'm just done with it all moments. So like the breakdown is far too exaggerated, but the little pandemic tantrum, I think, is more accurate. So I just had one of those in the afternoon. And last night at Vespers, Father Rob prayed that the merciful Lord would bring a swift end to this dreadful plague.
I can hear him saying that.
Just like with all the solemnity and grace that only Kevin Robb has. I just felt like something within me is being named. And I know one of the things in the book, Peggy, is this idea, like, where do you turn when you've had enough? So like when you're sorting through these voices and when you feel like in a place where you're stuck. One of the examples you give is the life of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton and her response. Can you say a little bit about that, about her resilience, about what you do when you've just had enough?
Well, to tell a little bit about her story, you know, she was a convert. She was a high society lady and had this wealthy and lovely life. And then all of a sudden she converts, and that doesn't go over very well. As you know, and we like to look at it, it's like, oh my goodness, how could that have been? But I still have my aunt who's 98 and alive telling me, you know, they made me get married in the rectory, you know, because at that time she married someone Protestant. It's just the way things were. And then her husband died, and then they lost all their money, and she was just destitute. And so, you know, did she like go back to her family, give up on her faith? She instead, you know, founded schools. She's basically the founder of Catholic schools, and she took like a horrific downturn into something wonderful. So I think that all of us can sometimes, you can't always make lemonade out of lemons. Sometimes things just stink. You know, there's just no doubt about it. And they do. And you just admit it, acknowledge it, and you either move on or, you know, and you can grieve the rest of your life, but you just cope with it as best you can. But if you have a support group, whether it's a person, an actual support group, or a good and loving God, or a parent, like honestly, there was a woman in my neighborhood walking by. I don't even know her. She was like, we have a neighborhood where people stroll. And I'm getting my mail and I forgot my mask. And so I'm standing back like, oh, there's someone coming by. And she walked by and she said, can you believe it? And I said, believe what, ma'am? Because I talk to everybody. And she said, this whole thing. I said, oh, you mean the pandemic? Yes, I'm sick of it. And she's just like raging about the pandemic as she's walking and telling me, a total stranger who seemed to have a sympathetic face. And I said, you know, I agree, and I don't understand this, but the only thing that's getting me through is I figure God has a plan. I have no idea what it is. He's not listening to me, and I don't like his plan so far, and I'm not happy with him right now, but I'm not giving up on him, and that's all I can say to you. And then she reaches in her pocket and pulls out a pair of rosary beads and says, that's right, thank you, and then keeps on walking. And I'm just like, was that a grace-filled moment? Like, how does this stuff happen to me? It always does. But anyway, but I just think that, you know, we have to just look at the bad and just muddle through it sometimes, and then hope there's something that enlightens us at the end. That's, Father, you're the Father Mac. You guys are the theology people and all. I'm just like, I'm the Irish Catholic philosopher raised by women who just, you know, gave me their bits that I think are actually pretty wise. And so, you know, but I don't have.
I agree. That's why I think the book is great.
But I don't have the Tommy Aquinas down pat like some people do.
I have another question. Peggy, this question is just kind of about the book, about the process. There's that great quote from Flannery O'Connor, which you probably know. Flannery O'Connor says, I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I say. Were there any of those moments for you in writing the book where you discovered something, you know, a new view, especially with, as pertains to self-acceptance, that you didn't know was there until you saw it, having come from your own hand?
Well, I think, how many of you like to write, you know, are writers? Any of you? Yeah. What is this? I think if you like to write, you find that that's your way of talking to people without, you know, and then you look back and go, oh, that's rubbish, or oh, that's good, or I didn't know I thought that. I've been keeping a journal probably since 7th grade. You know, just writing down my thoughts. Oh, I think Bobby's cute, you know, or deep, profound thoughts like that. And then later on, you know, trying to be more profound. And so when it came to this book, I owe credit to so many people, but as you know, my son Matt and my daughter Carrie both have books published by Loyola Press. Carrie, you can't see her, but, and she's an editor at America Magazine. So we have 2 Jesuits, sort of, but she has a PC degree as well. And so their editor said, I retired to be with my adorable grandchildren. We have 8 grandchildren under the age of 6. So they said, do you have a book in you? and I mostly had written, I was a reporter for years and done some commentary, but nothing like, I never thought I could do a book like that. And then it came to me, I'm sitting in Good Friday Mass, Good Friday service, and they're saying, Jesus died for you. And I'm realizing, no, not me, but like everyone else, but that's nice. And I realized that even at my age, I wasn't quite sure that I was worthy. And so that's, I think, the part you say, is there any part in writing the book? It was the start of the book that made me realize, holy guacamole, I've been sitting around my whole life professing to believe all these things, God is good and all this, but I'm not quite sure, like, I'm going to make it, or even if I should make it, or if I'm really worth it. And then Carrie, we were down in New Jersey for Killian's first birthday, and Carrie looks at me and says, it's his first birthday, but we're not having a big fuss. It was Good Friday, he's 1. And she says, we're just having this little cake and cheese pizza. Do you think it's okay? Or do you think he'll look back and wonder why he didn't have a pony or something? And I'm like, no, he's fine. And then I thought, oh, it's so hard. Like if any of you have been aunts or parents or anybody that you're taking care of people and you look at the first communion banners at the other families, seem how to have glitter eyes, and mine looks like a 4-year-old cut it out because I did. And, or if you feel like other mothers put their kids in Halloween costumes, and Matthew, you wore Batman pajamas with a pillowcase, like safety pin to you. But you just sort of say, okay, that's who I am. But it's a long way in coming to who you are. And even if you think you're doing it, all of a sudden you realize when you're sitting in church on a Good Friday, you're still not there yet. And that's what got me writing more and more. Hi, Cordelia. So that's, I think, the process that was my enlightenment, that first time in church. And it led me to, there's the idea for my book.
I love the story of the first birthday, because in Briscoe family lore, we have a joke that we torture my mother with, because the first vacation that she and my father took was on my sister's first birthday. So I have 2 younger, we're very close in age. I have 2 younger sisters, they're both twins. So 3 very small kids, very close in age. You can imagine what the Briscoe house was like for a couple of years. And mom and dad were just gone for the first birthday. So my sisters love to name that as their like childhood trauma, and to jokingly pin.
You abandoned us on our birthday.
So Carrie, maybe that can be the future in your family. But I think that that like moment, that realization of it's for me. Love is for me, and meaning in my life is for me is just a really incredible thing. And your testimony for that being the origin of the book is a clear source of it. It's a clear source of why it's so rich.
I just want to say something too. Heidi, remember when I said I met Liz at an Arts Honors luncheon or something, I guess when they were honoring teachers or something, I don't remember what it was. And you said, oh, you were the smart kids. And the way you said it, and I know you're a very accomplished young woman and you've done done so much, but isn't that still that part? And the reason I want to tell you this is when I joined the honors program, did you ever hear of Father Coskren, Father Thomas Coskren, Father Patrick? No? Oh,
sure, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, believe it or not, you got to imagine this in the 70s, right? He's smoking his cools. He's just, at the table, smoking his cools, and there are cans of beer and wine on the table, because drinking age is 18, and this is a seminar, and we're all wonderful, and it's the 70s. And so he says, please go around and tell me your interest, and tell me about your life, and where you're from, and what you like. So I honestly can't remember what the other kids were saying, because I'm sitting there going, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Am I even going to remember where I'm from? And some pretty smart kids were saying stuff. And then the girl next to me, and I can say this, she'll probably remember this, I hope, is Dr. Della Santa's daughter. Now, he was this, for those that maybe didn't know, Dr. Della Santa was this brilliant professor, and his daughter was like gigantic brain. And she says, my name is Deborah Della Santa, and I'm interested in the Renaissance. And I'm like, what? The Renaissance? Like, who's interested in the Renaissance? I don't even think I can spell it. And so Father Coskren being, Father Coskren says, "Oh, really, Deborah? What part of the Renaissance? Oh, the Italian, like up at the Florentine." And then they start talking about stuff, and like my head's exploding. Like, oh, great! Not only do I not know what I'm going to say, but I'm following like smart girl. So then I looked at Father Coskren and I said, "Hi, I'm Peggy Martin from Springfield, Massachusetts, and I'm interested in baseball, most specifically the Boston Red Sox." I thought he was going to throw his beer at me, but I used humor to deflect the fact that day I thought to myself that even though I was in this Smarty Honors program, I was in the shallow end of the pool. And so if they'd say, "Let's go to an opera," I'd be like, "No, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to hang out with the Spike Shoe Club chick and Mick and Beth. I'm just going to hang out with like regular people because I'm not really smart. I don't even know how I ended up here." And so I think we do that to ourselves. We gauge ourselves. People say to you, "What school did you go to?" Or then there's a chapter, "Accomplished enough." What do you do? Some people will say like, "I'm just a mom," or "I'm just retired," or "I'm just something." You're not just anything. You're amazing. You're a child of God and you're all fantastic, but we need someone to just hug our people, just like Cordelia knows she's awesome. Look at her. And just feel that you're who you are, but it's hard. And so that's why I didn't mean to embarrass you. I'm just saying that I've had that moment too, where you just look around. And so I don't want anyone ever to think or feel that way, because we do that to ourselves and we do it sometimes to others. So.
Currently unmuted.
Well, I ran into almost a similar situation as I was heading out the office door, because I thought to myself, "Oh my God, now I've been identified by my work." And then somebody that I happened to meet on a commuter rail once, she gave me a reminder, and I thought this was great. You were Dennis before you started your career. You were Dennis while you had your career. You're still Dennis now that you're retired.
That's very
basically don't let your work be the identifier.
That's a good point. There's actually, as only Father Patrick could do this, there's actually a study guide for the book, right?
Oh.
And he said, "Why don't we use the study guide as part of our discussion?" And I wisely said, "What study guide?" He said, "It's the publisher that you've been working with has a study guide." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I looked it up. Or actually, no, I didn't even look it up. You sent it to me. And one of the things, the questions is, finish this sentence, "I am." And, it could be a feeling or an emotion, but like, I am smart, or I am a mother, or I am a priest. But beyond that, what am I? I am enough. That's the ideal answer. Surprisingly, when I looked at the questions, as only my identity could, and this was no surprise to some people who know me, I immediately...
I am very proud of my mom right now. Zoom.us has new window.
Oh, I am Catholic. That's the first thing that popped into my head, which is, it just shows you how much my faith runs in my blood. But beyond that, I think it'd be interesting if you wanted to answer, if you thought about what I am means to you.
I think what I find, especially now during the pandemic, is I am grateful, because many other people have a much worse situation than I am. They're trying to work at home. They have children, husbands, families are all together. And for me, it's just me and a dog. So I don't have those stresses and pressures like others do. And I think about that, especially if I'm talking to, nieces or my nephews in their situations, or they're trying to work or worrying about losing their jobs and everything. So I really, during these periods, feel I'm grateful.
That's a beautiful sentiment. And I think that's, Maybe that's someone, Father Patrick, whispering in your ear too, God, besides Father Rob with understanding your prayer. You know, we're all trying to be mindful of like how frustrated we get, but then ultimately be grateful for what we particularly have and that we are happy with, you know.
I mean, actually, I'm grateful we're still around right now, even though it's very frustrating not to be able to go to symphony concerts, not to be able to go to a PC basketball game at this moment. When I was in college, I held season tickets for both hockey and basketball. And so I'm like, okay, I want to enjoy my music. Okay, I'll have to go on YouTube for a while. I know where to get it. But I sometimes make a joke about it. I tell people that I've got a new disease out of this pandemic, performing arts withdrawal syndrome. Pause. Because I have no performances to go to, no place to go to. Because, I mean, for a while, you know, I go to the Providence Performing Arts Center, see a good musical, head to Federal Hill afterwards, get a nice Italian dinner and wine, and then go home. And I'm like, and it doesn't look like I'm going to get that till the middle of 2021 at the very earliest at this point now.
Well, Dennis, I think you have your music anyway, and I think if we have to live without the symptoms, I feel sorry for the people who actually perform and have lost their living. You know, that makes it even harder. So,
well, thank God, at least in the symphony and pop set, they're doing a lot of virtual performances at this point. But yeah, it's got to be tough on their end.
Father Patrick, another question?
Yeah, as we, you know, just kind of thinking through what are the sorts of things to take away from the book. So one of the last things I want to ask you, Peggy, is I like this question. If you had to leave your home in a hurry, what would you take? And I think this is a way of prioritizing, like, you know, of course, our lives and who we are, and it's a helpful thing. So I wanted to ask you, Peggy, you know, if you have to leave your home on short notice, what is it that you're taking with you?
Well, this comes from the Stuff Enough, where I described my frantic mad dash to get 2-year-old Carrie a Cabbage Patch doll. She didn't even know what they were, didn't care, and I made a complete and utter fool of myself with my sister-in-law out in Wisconsin. We were living there, or we had just come back from living there, and we went in like spies into a Kohl's and got them in brown paper bags, and we put them. I wouldn't even put them overhead on the airplane. I put them under my seat, you know, and I realized I put too much importance on that stuff. So then I try and think about what I would not. So I mentioned actually one of the things I think I would take, believe it or not, is a Waterford Crystal baseball that has the Boston Red Sox, because it reminds me of a happy time when my family, all the 3 kids and my husband and I, went to Cooperstown. Now, that probably doesn't make sense, like, you know, when you're scrambling and throwing things in there. Obviously, photographs, because we are pre-digital for most of our photographs. Maybe important records, but of course the most important thing I would grab is my husband's hand and run out the door, and like, the heck with everything else, you know? And I'd probably grab my purse, just because it's such a pain nowadays to try and get your license renewed. But I think I asked that question because I want to show that, like, when at the end of it, you know, especially a lot of you are young, but for the ones that are more my class, know that we have to say we've accumulated stuff, but like, my kids are going to have to sort through it, you know. So, like, it's not going with me, and what does it mean, and how much value do we put on it? And I see, Father, did somebody ask a question? As you know.
Yeah, I just caught that, and I wanted to direct your attention to it. Thanks. So the question is, studies have shown that people are happier when they're older. Do you agree? Do you think this is true?
Isn't there people are just about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Who said that? I know the quote, but I don't know who said it. And I've always felt that that's sort of the way it is in life. I think you're more comfortable in your own skin when you're older, and maybe people become more satisfied. But, you know, I sometimes look at people who are crabby, some crabby people when they're older, and I think they might have been a little crabby even when they were younger. I think sometimes people just have certain dispositions. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but I did see, I'm not very good with technology, but I did see that Ed mentioned how he stresses that to tell his children to be different, it's okay. And that's something I do think that if you have that message that I don't have to, you know, I can go to the beat of my own drum. I can be who, St. Francis de Sales is actually the one who said, be who you are and be that perfectly well. And I think maybe by the time you're older, you figure out who you are, but, and you know, all the way to heaven is heaven. So you figure out your way along the way. But right. I don't know, anyone else have an idea on that?
I think it's very easy to be nostalgic and to think that that's an indication of a greater sign of happiness, you know, to recommend a moment, you know, to recall a moment that was very good. But even that kind of nostalgia, as comfortable and as warm as it can be sometimes, it takes us away from where we are in the present moment. And that's really all that we can live in. We can't live in either the past or the future. We can live in the now, we can live in the here and now. And so for me, that was one of the things that was comforting about the book, Peggy, was the, you know, that I was thinking of as I'm walking away from it, was thinking of the call to self-love and self-acceptance is a call to live in the present moment and to be where you are in life, and to actually be present there and be attentive to that moment and not to be drawn out of it, even by pleasant memories. I think that's a temptation that we don't often think of. But it's one that I see all the time because I'm blessed to work at a university and I hear alumni talking about happier days. And you know, sometimes it can be difficult because you recognize that people's lives are not what they thought they were going to be like when they were in college. And so, you know, so that affords an opportunity for, you know, for a deep conversation. But I think that the call to self-love and to self-acceptance is an invitation to live genuinely, to live well in the present moment, as much as it is anything else.
I think so. I think this time at Christmas, as we're rushing around looking for presents, reminds us about what brings us joy or comfort, and sometimes buying things or accomplishing things or doing things. But ultimately, and I don't know if you see that little girl, see that under Elizabeth, that Cordelia. This child, since the day she's been born, has been joy. And I think for me, if you can spend time, anytime in your life with just small children at any stage, they kind of know what's going on far more. Like, we think we have to teach them, but they just know how to be like, hello, how are you today? And they just, you know, they'll tell you the truth about stuff. You know, as sweet as she is, she'll go, oh, Grandma, oh, you're old, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. You know, she's just like, or you think sometimes you're very, you know, your grandchildren or somebody, you've done so much to teach them. And we were at the library and she came running up to me and she said, Grandma, I found a book. And this is in front of parents, librarians. And I said, it reminds me of you. And I'm like, oh, and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be a book of poetry. Oh, it's going to be a Tommy DePaulo book, you know, and it's an alphabet book. And I said, oh, an alphabet book. She says, yes. And she opens to D. She goes, it has donuts in it. It has donuts in it. And you love donuts. I'm like, yes, I do. And so then the librarian goes, oh, I like donuts. And Cordelia then says, you can't have that donut. My grandmother gets the chocolate donut. And it's just like, there's the truth. There's the story. There's who you are. And they just keep you humble and they just keep you, yeah, that's right. You know, think about this. Think about your own eulogy. What's your eulogy going to say? You know, like if you had to write your own obit today, you know, maybe one of you will get your obit in the New York Times. I'm sure mine won't. You know, that's already one status, you know. But secondly, Peggy Weber, you know, and then it's like, she liked chocolate. donuts, and like, what else are you going to be known for? And then say to yourself, what can I do? Want to be known for being a generous person or a kind person or a loving person? Isn't that the best part? I mean, you can accomplish a lot. And that doesn't mean you just sit around and go, I'm just going to be loving and do nothing, or I'm just going to be, you have to define it in the way you can. But I just think that I think about that, as you go through periods of life, what's your legacy?
Is there an audio version of your book?
There is, Dennis. It's, I think it's, I'd have to, if you went on the Amazon.
Dennis, I'll put the link in the chat. It's through Audible though. I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you. As I told you, I'm the worst. I love writing and I love telling stories, but and I don't even mind talking to people, but I'm not very good at self-promoting or knowing even all the things that are connected to this. So,
yeah. Well, before I got to reestablish your contact, so I can give you my email.
Sure. Well, actually, if you registered via email, if it's okay with you, Dennis, Stephanie could give me your email and I could send you a note. Is that?
Go ahead. You can also give you my phone if you want.
Okay, Steph. So, and it's funny too. I'm trying to look. Liz, did both you and Heidi play hockey at PC?
Yes.
Yeah. So, how impressed? Like, look at these ladies. Like, they were the
.us has new window.
first woman. Were you the first members? Did they have a hockey team? Were you the first hockey team at PC? Yeah. Look at that. Look at those trailblazers.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And then they had a few good women's hockey teams later, and some of them wound up winning U.S. Olympic gold medals.
Oh yeah, they were first. I'm just teasing. I don't want you to. And you know what? I remember that because I think even when you're at school, you're sort of like, those girls are cool. They play hockey. So I actually thought that, when I was looking at you. So, and you don't even know, and then you don't even know in terms of a sense of welcome. Like Ed Samini, who was the editor of the Cowl, went my senior year. I went in, and the Cowl primarily, a lot of the reporters for the Cowl were commuters at the time. It was more, they had more commuter students. And I remember like marching in my sophomore year going, hi, can I write? And, who knows where I would have gone, but they embraced me and they were so nice. And I've made some very good friends since then, then I appreciate that. So thank you, Ed. So, and you just never know how an encounter or a turn or a person will change anything. Does anyone want to talk about something at PC themselves that just they remember as a happy memory that was just a kindness or something that just like, God, I love that place. Or even,
So many to everyone. You are very welcome.
Some of the nicest people I met at PC, besides, I had a great group in Stevens Hall. But some of the best people I met did reading for me at various times.
Teresa has left.
And members of the Friars Club. You couldn't get nicer people than them.
Anyone
and of
else?
course, I sang in the choral club and went to a few basketball games, a few hockey games.
And Dennis, kudos to you, both you and Marianne Masterson, who was in our class, if you remember.
Yes.
The school was welcoming to people with visual impairments, but it certainly wasn't the norm. And yet you just were one of us, and we just all walked the walk of PC together with you, just like, it wasn't like, ooh, it was just like, oh, hi, Dennis,
But I remember when it was time for commencement, I remember I think Father Dan was handling the special events, Dan Alowitz. And he said, if you want, we can send somebody down with a degree. I said, no, I will go up and get it.
Good for you, Dennis.
And Brian Burke made sure I did. He got a friar assigned to take me up. And I,
I'll share. So
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I had wonderful roommates at Providence, and I loved the school. I love my memories. We always would go to Mass together, and we'd especially go during finals. You know, it's kind of
yeah.
we'd all go pray for each other. And we continued it through the years that whenever we got together, we'd always find Mass, no matter where we were. And it was very special. And to this day, we don't talk as often as we'd like, but we will do prayer chains. And it doesn't matter what's going on. When we do pick up the phone, we just pick up right where we left off. So the people and the memories, it's a special place. And a few years ago, I was having a birthday, and there wasn't a lot of excitement going on. And it was the winter where we had 70 inches of snow in Boston. It was just like, we just kept getting these storms and nothing would melt. And I had no idea. But my husband threw me a surprise party, and I thought it was going to be like really small. We'd said like, just have like, you know, a few people, just so my daughter thought it was good. And I walk in, and there's my roommate from the Berkshires with her kids, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? We're supposed to get like 2 feet of snow the next day. And then I look down the driveway, and I have my other roommate from like Long Island, and then it was like they all came.
To everyone.
And
I need to leave everyone.
they had no idea. He had no idea how far away they all
Lexi has
were.
left the meeting.
And it really, that feeling of feeling that important, that they would bring their families and all come to celebrate my birthday, it lasted a really long time. And when, like, it's just that specialness, and that, you know, we show up for each other. But it was special. And I think the key points, you know, to have that support system and friendships and know God loves you, I think those are really important. But they really stood out, and it was really special. And, you know, we shoveled and got them all on the road the next day, but it was wonderful to really get some time with each other. And, you know, Providence is a special place, so kind of struck
It
a chord.
is.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I probably am, well, and connected to more people from PC than, you know, like Chick and Beth Johnson and Mick O'Shea and Ginny Provo, and I can just start naming Ginny Sicali, you know, and like I could name like tons of people. I'm still connected with it, and we're going to be out next spring. I told you, 45 years. That's a long time, and yet the bonds are still there. You know, it's amazing. So thank you for sharing, Rebecca.
The last I heard of Ginny, I think she was in Manchester, New Hampshire.
She is. Yeah.
Yep.
Christine Smith has left the meeting.
So thank you. Father, should we wrap it up? Is that okay? Or do you have something else to say, something profound to send us off with, Father? No pressure.
Well, I do actually have something fun to share. So maybe some of you have heard that Walter Hooper, who was the literary executor of C.S. Lewis, died recently. And I think different people have different views on this, but I think that part of Lewis's enduring popularity is because of the way his collections were curated and promoted by Walter Hooper. But Hooper's desired epitaph reads thus: "And I smile to think how God's completeness flowed round my incompleteness, round my restlessness, his rest." And because I've been thinking about enough as you are, recognizing that it's ourselves before God, it's recognizing who we're meant and made to be. I think it's really that rest of God that he gives, that completeness that he gives, that allows us to say what Peggy is suggesting through the message of the book. So I thought of that as I was reading about Hooper, and I thought that epitaph is marvelous, and now going to have to work very hard to come up with something duly creative for my own self to torture my brethren with beyond my years. But Peggy, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing about the book, sharing so openly about your own life, for allowing us to hear stories about your family, about sharing stories about Providence College and for giving us all and encouraging us all in the life of faith.
I just got a tickle in my throat. Sorry, I am more than happy to have been with you, and I would do anything for PC. And I thank you all for coming, and I'm delighted to see so many of my classmates and my children and my husband, who's on mute, but like the most wonderful man in the world. And not just classmates, PC Friars, class of 77, class of 75, and even our love. I'm so delighted, Mr. Mack, that you came, our Jesuit dad, and PC Mom was here, and then I think you'll find out that there's a woman that was in our parish who said I had 7 kids and they all loved their colleges, but none of them loved it as much as my son who went to PC. There's just something there in the air. And so, go Friars. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Peggy.
Thank you.
Great job, Mom.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy.
We still have 2 copies of the book to give away, so
Oh, yes.
I'll be following up after the discussion, if that's okay.
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 Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you.
SJ
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Chick has left the meeting.